Some breaking news we have been following after this morning. The people of Scotland having their final goodbyes to Queen Elizabeth. Now the Queen Elizabeth's coffin, the casket, is on board the C-17 right here as it arrives at the Air Force Base near London, where eventually she will be taken in the funeral next Monday.
Absolutely, and she has been, the Queen's casket, transported by the Royal Air Force. Of course, you're seeing that Royal Air Force base landing here in Northolt. Queen Elizabeth will lie in state in Westminster Hall before being buried next Monday on the 19th. Now, you're seeing here, just touched down at the Air Force Base in Northolt in England. And of course, we will be bringing all of it to you as it happens.
And right there, by the way, on the right at the end of that line, you can see the Prime Minister Liz Truss, who is awaiting the Queen's casket. And we will continue to follow this, but let's get the latest details from our London correspondent, Olly Barrett. Olly.
The final flight for the Queen touching down at RAF Northolt, as you say. This is a military base just to the west of London, not far from where I am now at Windsor Castle. The Queen will receive a guard of honour from assembled RAF personnel for their former Commander-in-Chief. She will then be whisked into London. The motorcade will travel through the streets of West London to Buckingham Palace, where the Queen will be greeted by members of her close family. All of this was timed earlier so that King Charles's visit to Northern Ireland got him back to Buckingham Palace in time to greet the Queen this evening, UK time. She'll remain at Buckingham Palace overnight for a final time before she begins a procession on Wednesday through the streets of central London to Westminster Hall, close to Westminster Abbey, where her funeral will take place on Monday. And she'll lie in state there for 4 full days, right through until the morning of the funeral on the 19th of September. Hundreds of thousands of mourners are expected to file past her coffin at Westminster Hall to pay their respects. There are thousands of people on the streets of the British capital this evening as well to see that journey that she will make through the streets of West London towards the centre of the capital and then into Buckingham Palace. And I think we can expect that to be a journey that is respected quietly. There may be some applause, but plenty of people wanting to get out and get what may be for them a final glimpse of the Queen as she makes that journey through the streets of London. As I say, King Charles continuing his tour around the United Kingdom. There's more of that to come later in the week. He'll also visit Wales before the week is done to make sure that he's visited all of the nations that make up the UK by the time of the Queen's funeral on Monday. Some very interesting polling today, by the way, which shows a large majority of the British population think that Charles will do a good job. Well over 60% of Brits think that the monarchy is an institution that they want to keep. Politicians would kill for numbers like those. Back to you.
A point well made, although politicians actually have to make decisions, and in the case of the monarchy, not so much. In fact, that may have been part of what made the Queen so popular, is she didn't take political positions, but offered a stability to the entire country for 7 decades, and support through thick and thin, if you will, no matter what was going on.
Yeah, truly, I mean, you know, it's no one really has ever, or most people have never experienced another Queen in England. I mean, she has been with most of us our entire lifetimes, as well, of course, as of the people of the UK. But also, I think there's something to a consistency. She has always been there through everything. And
and by the way, the pageantry that we've seen here it has been spectacular.
Yeah.
And Olly, I'm kind of curious. I would think that the Queen would be a significant individual in your life. And I was curious what your plans are. Are you going to be able to break away? Are you going to be able to see the Queen's casket?
I can tell you that right now my wife is in a car driving as quickly as she can towards a road called the Westway, not far from our house in West London, where she hopes to catch a glimpse of the casket on its journey into central London. I'm in Windsor, so I won't see it this evening, but I hope to catch a glimpse of it on Monday, because Windsor becomes a key focus on Monday after the funeral, when the Queen returns here, and there'll be a procession through the streets here in Windsor, where she spent so much time over the years and which she really came to call home in the final years of her life. And so Windsor is very much gearing up for that on Monday, when there's a committal service after the funeral, and she's finally buried here in the castle behind me, in the grounds of the castle behind me, alongside her late husband, Prince Philip.
Yeah, as we watch some of the dignitaries and family members who are either accompanying or welcoming the Queen's casket, I'm kind of curious what the expectation is. Is it clear communication with people, Olly, as far as where the casket will be as it rides through London, and where people can go to pay their final respects, assuming that not everybody will be able to see her as she lies in state?
Yeah, exactly, there is. I mean, to a limited extent from a certain point of view, because of course there are security concerns here as well, but people have a pretty good idea of the route that the motorcade will be taking through the streets of West London today. Very clear communication about the procession that will happen in central London tomorrow as she moves from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. So people are being given every opportunity to get out there if they want to, and many people are taking that opportunity. And what people here in Windsor have been saying to me, and I've heard similar from people at Buckingham Palace in London, is that they may never see anything like this again. And many people are saying they want to take this opportunity to A, get out and see the Queen in some form for the last time, and B, share this experience with other people, because they know, as I say, that this is just the kind of thing that doesn't happen very often. Of course, in this country, we haven't seen it for 70 years because of the time that the Queen was on the throne. So yes, people are being given as much direction as possible so that they can take that opportunity, if they want to get out there and see what's going on.
Yeah, truly a moment in history. Olly, you mentioned some polls during your report, and you said that a high number of country people in the UK still support the existence of the monarchy. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I lost the end of your question there, but just let me take you through that polling. This is done by YouGov over the last couple of days, and it says, generally speaking is the question, do you support or oppose Britain having a monarchy? Support comes in at 64%, oppose 21%, so a very large majority for support. And then the question, do you think King Charles will do a good job or bad job as king? Good, 63%. Bad, just 15%. And bear in mind that since this poll was last run, the good answer has jumped by 31% for King Charles. So I think that just gives you a sense of how even the last few days have changed the thinking in many people's minds about Charles himself as an individual and how well he'll be suited to this role.
As we look at the coffin being taken off of that C-17 Boeing aircraft, for the last journey the Queen will make ultimately to her final resting place, I was kind of curious, Olly, whether the people are turning out for the fact that they liked the Queen, she was overwhelmingly popular, or the fact that this is really history. And as you say, almost nobody has seen something like this in their lifetime.
I think it's a mixture of those things. What a lot of people will say to you is that they want to pay their respects to the Queen. A lot of people say things like, I want to thank her in some way for her service over the last 7 decades. Other people will very much say to you that they feel that this is a moment in history and they want to share it with other people. They want to be able to tell their grandchildren that they were there, that they saw this happen, that there were thousands of people on the streets with them. And a lot of people are remarking as well on the atmosphere when they get out onto the streets. We've been talking to people here in Windsor, for example, who will say, yes, when the motorcade comes past or an individual royal is seen, there's respect. But at the same time, they say there's a feeling sometimes of celebration, of wanting to celebrate the life of Queen Elizabeth as well. So there's a real mixture of emotions and a mixture of reasons why people are getting out there. Shared experience is absolutely one of them, and the individual herself is also absolutely one of them.
Olly, I was also wondering, the Queen is the head of the Anglican Church, and are there plans over the weekend for all the churches, and I'm sure there are hundreds of them throughout the country and certainly throughout the kingdom. Will they be having special services in honor of the Queen?
Absolutely, they will be, and indeed we've seen some of them taking place at individual churches already, but Sunday will be another moment for that to happen en masse, if you like. And one of the interesting things on that note to look at for the future is the whole idea of faith. And it's been said before that Charles has come to see himself really as a guardian in some way of all of the faiths of the United Kingdom, not just that of the Church of England. And so it'll be interesting to see how he handles that, those conversations going forward. We've often seen him and others in the royal family try to make sure that they're actually bringing together faith leaders across the board, not just representing the Anglican Church in that way. But yes, absolutely, in England particularly, over the course of the weekend, we'll see much more of that. Services taking place, Thanksgiving services as well. And as I say, it all ends here at Windsor Castle behind me. The Queen was absolutely adamant that she and Prince Charles would eventually rest together in the grounds of the castle where she spent so much time.
Yeah, we're looking right now, Olly. I don't know if you have a monitor, but impeccably, these members of the Guard have delivered the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II into the hearse, which is open, notably, so that people can look in and see it as it drives through the streets of London on its way to the final destination. But one of the things about this whole process, of course, is the pomp and circumstance.
Yes.
It just seems as though everything has been impeccably done.
Absolutely. I mean, every detail, every single flower, the placement of every single guardsman who is there and awaiting Queen Elizabeth's arrival, and even I think we're going to see the mourners along the way. They just have such love, and I think even a sheer desire just to see the Queen one last time, as Olly pointed out. And again, we're going to be seeing the streets on the way to Buckingham Palace just completely lined with mourners, hoping to get a glimpse of Queen Elizabeth II.
You know, Olly, we have a lot of TV networks here which will take this story from time to time, especially when something's going on, like we're watching right here. And since last Thursday, if I'm recalling right, when the Queen did officially pass, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of coverage on the American networks. I was curious whether this is wall-to-wall there in the United Kingdom, how it's handled over there.
Yeah, it's absolutely wall-to-wall here in the United Kingdom. The major television news channels have hardly touched on anything else. There's been some debate about that. There have been some radio stations, for example, that have consciously decided after a few days of coverage to actually start to return a bit of focus to things like the cost of living crisis and inflation and the economy and all the challenges coming down the line in that regard. But generally, it's absolutely wall-to-wall. It's front-page news every single day. I think that will continue through past Monday when the funeral takes place, and then of course that coverage will lessen a little bit, and so yes, it's been absolutely all over all of the various news outlets here in the UK. There's been some discussion and conversation about the role of the monarchy, about the history of the monarchy, about some of the controversies as well. But for the most part, I think it's fair to say that the UK media coverage has been focused on what's unfolding and the life and the duties and the accomplishments, whatever you consider those to be, of the Queen over the last 7 decades. The coverage has been almost exclusively positive, but as I say, some of those conversations at times about republicanism and those people who would like to see the monarchy moved aside now. But those polls today that we were talking about earlier, very interesting in that regard. It does look as if republicanism, for now at least, and you never know what the future holds, remains a pretty niche view in this country.
All right. Thank you very much, Olly Barrett. We'll check back in with you in just a little bit as we see the procession ever so slowly of the Queen taking its last trip, Katrina,
final trip.
from this Royal Air Force Base, and then we'll be going through the streets of London, ultimately Westminster Hall, where she will lie in state for several days. And people will be able to pay their respects on the streets as she goes through them, and then there itself, with ultimately ending with the funeral on Monday. We'll continue to follow this as well, folks. There is news, obviously, going on back here in the United States, and we're on top of that as well.